if shit hits the fan with a monetary system crumbling down. If people already have something to lean on, like Bitcoin, there can be less pain. They wanted to get Bitcoin when the war came in, but they had like no way to get it. They couldn't take their houses with them. If you don't believe in everything the government is doing, using their money is basically still being part of it. You can do a transaction that you decide who you're going to send money to and when, how much. Nobody can stop it. My goal is to earn more Bitcoins in general. Like I want to measure my wealth not in dollar terms, but in Bitcoin terms. These dictatorships will be defunded in the end.
How long till Bitcoin is the main unit of account?
20 to 30 years.
First question, I think it's an interesting one because you're educating a lot of people about Bitcoin, and it's also a question I ask myself a lot because I also do a lot of Bitcoin content. And if Bitcoin is really that kind of sound money that we think it is, and it will come eventually anyways, like why are we doing the education part? Like if we could just sit back and relax and just see how the adoption grows, and we couldn't care less if Bitcoin is actually sound money.
That's a very good question because I asked it myself many times, and it's a nice mental experiment I'm doing with myself. It's like, yeah, if Bitcoin gonna succeed, like, do we need educators really? Yesterday I had a conversation here in El Salvador with one guy about it, and he sees Bitcoin as a not only like network of computers but network of people, and it really depends on the users and people who use it if it's going to succeed as well. I believe the more education we do, the faster the transition can be, or the less dangerous or less painful the transition to Bitcoin will be over time if shit hits the fan with a monetary system crumbling down. If people already have something to lean on, like Bitcoin, there can be less pain. And we see it in countries where something critical hits, like, for example, in Ukraine when the war came in. I'm from Slovakia, so there's a lot of Ukrainians came to Slovakia through the border. And I spoke with some of them, and they wanted to get Bitcoin when the war came in, but they had like no way to get it. They got some cash out of the ATMs, but then they got shut down or the cash was gone. They couldn't take their houses with them. So the price of Bitcoin was significantly increasing during that period. And I believe if people would be well educated or had some Bitcoin as a savings, it would be much easier for them to relocate and start a new life, have something with them. So I think this is like the education is kind of like a function of a time. The better we do that, the better we communicate Bitcoin and we understand the problems and show the problems to people, like, guys, get ready if something bad happens, take it as a saving, but also as an insurance policy. I believe the transition would be easier and there will not be so much pain as there could be. I think Bitcoin will eventually win, even if there wouldn't be educators, but that adoption, I think, will be through pain, and it's not the ideal way. I think we can do it better.
Yeah, I also think that because if you, like, for example, if you educate your uncle, your aunt, your friends, and you teach them how to proper self-custody, how to have the right tools and how to have the right exchanges and how to set everything up in the right way, you probably free them of some pain they would go through if they didn't have that education. So I think educators are here to make the transition smoother. So I think that's a wonderful way to look at it. How did you find your way into Bitcoin, and did you learn it through pain, or did you have someone to help you?
Luckily, I learned it through curiosity. That's the other way around. So you can either go through pain or through curiosity. So it was like first time I heard about Bitcoin was 2015. Didn't care that much. I was like, okay, that's a Ponzi scheme. It's a multi-level shit. Because it was introduced to me by a friend that was into these MLMs. So I didn't care for 2 years, and then 2017, my good friend who was doing web design in WordPress, we wanted a web for him for our company, and he told me, Dusan, right now I'm not doing so many websites, but I'm studying Bitcoin right now. I'm like, okay, Peter, so man, tell me more, because I kept hearing that and I don't believe it very much. So, but I believe you. So tried to explain to me. And he was telling me not about the price going up, but more about how Bitcoin can help in societies and communities where they don't have access to bank accounts, where inflation is crawling in and hyperinflation is is around. So that really fascinated me, and that helped me to see the benefits of the technology. At the time, I was studying management and economics, but I was studying mostly Keynesian economics because on the school we had no education on Austrian economics and on free market principles. So this got me intrigued, and I started to study Bitcoin. Like, I went down the rabbit hole that evening for like 6-7 hours straight, and then at maybe like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., I was like, oh damn, I would need to go to sleep right now. And the next day, I called my colleagues in the company, and I'm telling them, guys, I will not come to work for like 2-3 days. I want to study Bitcoin. So that was it for me. And already at the time, I was an educator. I was teaching kids math, English, and physics. So that was kind of my job as a university student. I was tutoring, younger students, older students as well. So at the time, I fell in love already with education. And when you see that information clicks to a person, and suddenly they see world differently, when you see the confidence in kids going up when they understand mathematics, and the parents seeing them differently and giving them more credit and respect to the kids, that was for me like amazing moments where I really fell in love with teaching and education. So when I got into Bitcoin and really fell in love with that, and I just combined it with education, and I started teaching Bitcoin. It was like 6 years ago.
What stood up out to you for Bitcoin? Because I think everybody has a kind of a different reason. What was special about Bitcoin? For me, it was like this store of value part. It's like you can save your financial energy. It's like a savings account in the cyberspace. And what was special to you for Bitcoin?
I think two things. Most importantly, the store of value as well. Having money that are outside of the system that you don't want to support. So if you don't believe in everything the government is doing, using their money is basically still being part of it. And this element of like, we can do it differently if you don't believe with everything they're doing, that was one of very important part. And also like this censorship resistance, like suddenly you can do a transaction that you decide who you're going to send money to and when and how much. Nobody can stop it. So this kind of freedom element, because I was very thrown into everything related to freedom for some years. I haven't been employed at all in my life. I was always, trying to hustle, um, buy some headphones from China and sell them in Slovakia. And then we started a construction business when I was 20. So I was always like, I want to do things my way. I want to kind of be my own boss. And this kind of freedom element was all around in me. So I think that also helped me to see the power of Bitcoin.
What are you hustling right now?
Right now we are mining Bitcoin. So I'm already like full time in Bitcoin ecosystem. So as an MTH, as our company, we are mining in Paraguay. We have around 1,000 machines there. Like 60% is our own, and the rest we are hosting for clients. And we do Bitcoin education. So currently I'm in El Salvador, and I did here for 2 days Bitcoin Educators Academy. So it was an academy focused on teachers, on how to teach Bitcoin better, how to be a better listener, communicator, how to simplify difficult concepts of Bitcoin. So this doesn't pay the bills, of course. It's more like a mission, but maybe one day it will sustain itself. Right now, we are sustaining it with the mining.
It's interesting. You are in a special place, I think, because you know Europe because of your history in Slovakia, and you also live in two countries with Honduras and El Salvador. They are, as I'm informed, right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they are having a shared border. And the one country with El Salvador has a president that pushed Bitcoin adoption quite aggressively. in 2021, and Honduras, as I understand it, is more like a grassroots adoption and has no leaders that do it try it top down. How do you see the different adoption going when you compare it with Europe and maybe also Honduras versus El Salvador? What differences do you see in the adoption there?
Oh, it's very very different, and Europe especially. In general, people don't feel the pain and don't feel the problem of money of banks because we have banks all around. You have multiple bank accounts. It's very easy for you to transfer money, use a credit card, debit card. So all this kind of legacy financial system is well positioned in Slovakia or in European countries. So people are asking, why Bitcoin? They just see as a speculation, as a money number go up, technology. They don't see Bitcoin as something useful very much. But then if you go to countries like in Central America or Southern America, suddenly people are like understanding the solution that Bitcoin is bringing. Because, they I met yesterday some educators who are telling me, there are people who cannot read, like 20, 25 years old. So they barely cannot can work with mobile phones. So for them, it's like everything needs to be more simplified. Uh, Nobody opens bank accounts to them. There's no banks around, no debit credit cards. Yesterday, I met a guy here, also in Salvador. He's like in his 60s or 67, never used a card in his life, only cash. So, so suddenly you see like a different society where Bitcoin can be viewed from a different angle as a technology that can really help them. And a comparison between Honduras and Salvador, it's very huge. In Honduras, sadly, the current president or the current government are more left-leaning, more socialist. So they don't see Bitcoin as something great for them. Although they see Bukele as a kind of a role model leader of how huge support he has, but they barely give a credit to Bitcoin and kind of erasing corruption and all of that because it's very corrupt. So we do the grassroots approach, we do the bottom up education approach, and we have a certain capacity. So in general, on the mainland, the Bitcoin adoption isn't that huge. We are focusing on Roatan, where we have the academy, where we live. So Roatan as an island, we already onboarded like 60 businesses there into Bitcoin. We help to educate them. Right now, we are creating like a merchant association for Bitcoin merchants. So kind of pushing a lot there because it's geographically, connected, isolated. Like we can focus there. Sadly, on the mainland, there are not so many Bitcoiners, and in Honduras in general, like Ethereum is kind of getting popular. There are some people pushing the blockchain narrative. So I hope that Bitcoiners will come and balance it out. But again, we would love to do much more, but we have just a certain capacity which we can allocate, and that's why we decided, okay, Roatan, because of the free private city of Prospera, where Bitcoin is a legal tender, and it's the first jurisdiction in the world from last year where you can do Bitcoin as a unit of account, which is also very unique. So that's why we are there, and that's why we are focusing on Roatan mostly right now.
How did you actually came to Honduras and El Salvador from Slovakia? What drove you there in that countries?
It wasn't Bitcoin at all. It was really funny because our client that was mining with us, Robert, one day he was sending me pictures of his family on a beach. There was like a beautiful turquoise water. I'm like, Robert, like, where are you? And he told me, man, it's a paradise. It's called Roatan. I was like, where is it? Like, is it Africa? Is it Asia? Is it, no idea. And then I Googled it out, and it was like, okay, this is Honduras. This is Caribbean. Perfect. But Honduras, isn't it like a dangerous country? So I Googled it out, and it was like the most dangerous country in the world. I'm like, okay, this seems weird. So I asked Robert, like, Robert, are you safe there? He was like, yeah, it's perfect. It's super safe. You need to come. And what he told me, what really made me arrive to Roatan, was that he bought a land on Roatan in a Czech village. I'm like, what? Like, the Czech village, there are Czechs. The third largest community on the island are Czechs. I'm like, oh my God, I'm from Slovakia. We used to be one nation before, Czechoslovakia. So I really wanted to see, like, what are the Czechs? What the hell are they doing on Roatan? and how come that they came all the way to Honduras and build a village there? So of course the Czechs are, the largest beer drinkers in the world per capita. So of course the story has to do something with beer. So they set up a brewery on the island because there was some agreement between Honduras and Czech Republic. So one guy took a chance. He came to Honduras. He set up the brewery on the island. So for 3 years they were brewing the beer, shipping it across Central America. And then one large brand of beer came to the island, dumped them with prices, so they needed to close down. But the Czechs stayed there, and they were like, okay, we are good at building stuff. So the first thing they built was a replica of a black pearl ship. Since Roatan is one of the most famous pirate islands, they wanted to build a pirate ship. So this guy, the same guy who built the brewery, built a black pearl pirate ship, and he was taking people all around Caribbean. So it was the largest pirate ship at that time, roaming the Caribbean Sea. Then it got decommissioned. I think somebody stole it and destroyed it. And they said, okay, what are we going to do again? So we are good at building, so let's build houses. And they slowly started building houses. So they built Czech Village, which is right now like 60, 70 houses there. There is a Czech hospoda, it's a Czech pub, where every Tuesday the founder of the village is playing guitar and singing Czech folk songs. So it's a very, very unique, weird place. And I was like, okay, I need to see that. So that was kind of what brought us to Roatan. And for 12 days, we were just roaming the island, enjoying the place. And then only I found out about Prospera, this private city, and then the story goes like how we started the academy afterwards.
Oh, that's an amazing story that you found Bitcoin there, and that you came there because of the checks. It's
Yes.
funny. I,
Very
I,
unexpected.
I imagine there is also a lot more circular economy going on in El Salvador and in Honduras even than in Europe. As you said, it's basically like a luxury item.
Hmm.
People see it as a luxury item in especially in Austria. Like based in Austria and I see a lot in Austria, and people are like, why do I need it? And even like it's a luxury item. If you have a lot of money, then you can go into Bitcoin. It's like something like that. And I speak with Bitcoiners from all over the world. Like I had some Africans on. I had from Australia, from like basically every part of the world. I try to get Bitcoiners on the podcast because it's interesting how they see different things differently, like CBDCs. I had an African on, and he said, like, I'm not worried about CBDCs. Like, I'm happy if I get some transactions going with Bitcoin, anyways. And yeah, it's fun to see the whole differences. How do you? There's one interesting question for me. Do you see it's important to spend your Bitcoin in order to fire up the circular economy, or is it like fine for Bitcoiner to just hold on? Like, and how do you see the difference between Europe and El Salvador there?
So, for example, in Honduras, we don't have a lot of circular economies. Basically, we are the only one on Roatan. As I said, on the mainland, there's not so many. Salvador is different, of course. Um, Bitcoin Berlin is doing an amazing job here in El Zonte, Bitcoin Beach. So there are some pretty amazing places here. And about the spending part, that's a very good question because this is something you can get asked very, very often. So I think it's kind of like the same with money. So if somebody asks you like, do you think it's important to spend money or to save it? And you're like, well, I need to spend money to survive because I need to buy stuff. And if I will not be saving, and something happens, I don't have money. So both things are very important. When we are doing Bitcoin education and when we explain Bitcoin well, the question comes of, okay, if this is a great tech, why should I spend that? If I'm spending, let's say, 3, 4, 5% to buy Bitcoin, non KYC, I don't know, in an ATM or peer to peer, whatever, like why should I pay with it? So this question is very valid for the people who don't earn Bitcoin or they need to pay to get Bitcoin and they are on the beginning of their journey inside of the rabbit hole. And it's kind of irresponsible and hypocritical in a sense to say to them, no, you need to spend Bitcoin to support the economy, the circular economy. And they're like, dude, I want to protect my purchasing power. So for them, the unit of the store of value is the most important part. The ones who are spending Bitcoin are mostly people who can afford to spend Bitcoin because they can buy it and they don't care about a couple of percent for a fee to really get to it. Or they are earning Bitcoin because, for example, for me, the same. My salary is all in Bitcoin. I don't have any cash to buy Bitcoin with. So for me to spend Bitcoin is very natural because I don't have any other way. I would need to exchange it for cash and then spend the cash, which is another hassle for me. That for some people is the vice versa. They need to buy Bitcoin to spend Bitcoin. Why would they do it? They can just spend cash immediately or spend pay with a card. So to jumpstart the circular economy, initially people should be motivated to spend Bitcoin. How they should be motivated? They could earn Bitcoin first. So if they open to earning Bitcoin as a little shops, suddenly they are getting some money and they need to they need to change it to dollar to pay with it, or they can spend it directly with Bitcoin, which is easier for them. So it takes some time, but initially you need to have people who understand the value of Bitcoin and that they want to keep it and get it. Maybe they give discounts when somebody pays with Bitcoin. So the first, they need to be very clear and very understand the idea of store of value and the value of Bitcoin. And then over time, they will naturally get into spending it, but it shouldn't be forcing them, because then it's like, dude, Bitcoin is great. Like, why should I spend it? So it takes some time, and this is how I see it.
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast just got the first ever sponsor. I just started the podcast out like 3 months ago, and now we have 21 Bitcoin as a partner for this podcast. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self custody. This is my go to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. Really interesting, because you are basically living on a Bitcoin standard. You're only earning Bitcoin, so you are also only spending Bitcoin if you need them.
Yep.
But I imagine you, before Bitcoin, you had just some fiat money. How is the changing? Like, did you notice some changes in your mindset? Because when you have fiat, like, it gets less over time, and Bitcoin, it like you think twice. Like, I think really hard before I spend or sell any Bitcoin, because I know when I do it, it could shoot up 2x tomorrow if something happens. Like, if Apple comes out tomorrow and says, oh, we are putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, it shoots up crazy like this. There's no question about it. So you think twice before you spend Bitcoin, I think. How did you notice any changes in your like mindset and day-to-day life of spending?
It's definitely like a lower time preference. So as well, I'm thinking about what to buy and how to spend. Although many times I don't want to, like, because I see a lot of Bitcoiners, they are like cutting down their lifestyle and cost like to an extreme level of, like, this meme of, if you have shares, you're not you don't have enough Bitcoins. There is a certain level in my point of view where basically my goal is to earn more Bitcoins in general. Like, I want to measure my wealth not in dollar terms but in Bitcoin terms. And if there is some investment or some purchase that helps me or makes it easier for me to earn more Bitcoins and have more Bitcoins in the end, I'm willing to do it. It's like just like an investment in a business, right? You're not cutting costs. You're not firing every employee because it's a spend, because nobody will be doing nothing. There will be nobody working in your company and their company dies. So kind of the same way I look at expenses as well, being much more careful of what to buy and if I really need this, and trying to figure out the lifestyle and everything. And so that's one thing. And also the whole volatility thing of everything. Suddenly it's like something I don't care about that much. Just the price of Bitcoin, I maybe see it once a week, 2 times a week. When there are some news, I'm scrolling Twitter, there is some news with like a green candle. I'm like, okay, let me check the price of Bitcoin. Whoa, it's like 5% up. Or the vice versa, if there's some negative meme, I check it. Oh, 7% down right now after the ETF. The price dropped. I just figured out from Twitter somehow, and then I checked. So I don't care about the price anymore that much, as it was in the beginning, that where I was checking the portfolio, or like what's the price is doing, and I was nervous, like, should I sell right now? Should I wait a little bit longer, and all of that. So kind of like a higher peace of mind, a more kind of meditative state towards the world and towards the change of exchange rate. And also, just I try to over time implement the Bitcoin mindset, in a sense that I don't want to measure Bitcoin in dollar terms. I want to measure dollar in Bitcoin terms. And then you see the dollar is kind of every time kind of lower and lower in terms of sats, because all this measurement thing, when we are measuring weight, when we're measuring length, we are using units that are fixed. You don't have a 1 meter rubber ruler that extends, and it's like a chewing gum. It goes up and down. We have a very fixed length, but suddenly when we're measuring value, we're using dollars and fiat currencies, which are changing all the time. It's a super stupid measuring unit. The only thing why we're using that, because we are accustomed to use that. We can think in dollars. If I tell you the beer is $7, you'd be like, damn, that's very expensive beer, right? So that's the measurement unit we understand. But we can over time learn to measure things in satoshis. It just takes time and practice, and really getting used to it. So I think like this is important also for humanity or societies or economies getting to a Bitcoin standard. It's not about just everybody using Bitcoin. It's more about the mindset behind, and just accounting and seeing value in something that's fixed in supply, just like the meter, just like the weight, just like 1 kilogram, and all of that.
The mean with one Bitcoin is real. Like if you don't use Bitcoin as like a unit of account, you're using fiat currency that's debased on a massive rate every year. You're doing something wrong. It's I like that thinking and that mindset, and I think it's hard for people that are still living on a fiat standard. I still live on a fiat standard. My salary is in fiat. I have to spend fiat because if I spend my Bitcoin, I have tax implications. Like it's a whole thing here in Austria.
Yeah.
And of course, there are tools and ways to do it, but it's a hustle and a hurdle. How does victory for Bitcoin look like? Like when you zoom out, like maybe 20 years or 50 years out, how do we say, oh, Bitcoin was successful? How do we measure that? How does a success for Bitcoin in 20 years look like?
Hard to say. I don't think there's some measure. I rather look into it from the personal level, because success is different for everybody else. And if some person feels that they are oppressed, or they are using money that are debased, and they are being messed around by the central banks, by the governments, and suddenly they can use Bitcoin and live in a place where they have same like-minded people using Bitcoin, and they are kind of financing their lives with Bitcoin, earning it and spending it. That's for me a success for that person. Um, does it need to succeed on a super big level to be Bitcoin be successful? I don't think so that much as well. I mean, Bitcoin is succeeding today for many people, even though it's not widely adopted. What I think is that if you look into technologies like internet or emails, we're not running our own mailing servers. Is it success for emails that everybody's running their own mailing servers? Is it success for internet if everybody understands how packets are distributed and routed? No. Um, and the same for Bitcoin. I think sadly a lot of people will implement or will use custodian services, because it will be much more convenient. So I think we would need to look into super distant future where people really change their habits and mindsets. But in general, people, like to be in the comfort zone. They like to be like somebody taking care of their stuff, and just educating people on being self-sovereign. I think that's even more important than Bitcoin being super adopted, because then it will come naturally to them. And they will kind of protect themselves against the oppression much better with Bitcoin, with digital self defense technologies and all of that. So I don't have in my mind something like an image of when Bitcoin succeeds. I mean, I would like to travel to places where people understand the value of Bitcoin and use it. And of course, there will be places that will be opposite, where there will be some oppression and dictatorship, where people will be not allowed to do that. I hope that citizens of these places will find a way to get out and get away and get to a place where they feel better treated, and these dictatorships will be defunded in the end. But that's kind of a very long game of defunding the states, and states being more like service providers and seeing you as a customer rather than a tool or an asset to a state. So this is kind of the images I have in my head of like what is the success of Bitcoin. And yeah, I see it more from like the personal level of every individual. And yeah, that's how I see that.
It's an interesting journey. Like defund Bitcoin as a device to defund like totalitarian authoritarian states that are just controlling just too much, and having a state that is basically a servant to the citizens. I think as it should be, as
Yeah.
because I think I'm from Austria, and I have like in the restaurants and in the guest business, it's always the saying that the guest is the king, and because the guest is the one that pays,
Yeah.
and who pays the state? The citizens, with
Yeah.
either taxes or with with their hidden tax with inflation. So then basically the state should serve the people best what they want. But it's kind of the opposite in the
Yeah.
last years, where it's like, oh, the state controls the people as the state thinks that people want it.
Yeah.
On sometimes not even democratic. If you look at like central bankers that they never voted on, like I never voted for any central bankers. Maybe local politicians, yes, they are voted on. They are on some local groups, and you can even call them. They are some kind of reachable, but not the high ups. Like there are some rules to it, and I think a lot about how Bitcoin can change the whole sphere with the political stuff and defunding wars, defunding a lot of stuff that goes wrong right now. And I think that's also like a long way out. The timeline is hard to predict, as you said, like 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, I don't know, but it's a fight worth fighting. Um,
Yeah.
when you look at the whole education scene for Bitcoin, I think when you fall in the first rabbit holes, you like having the whole technical things and then the financial things, and after a while you go deeper with privacy, no KYC, UTXO management. Like how deep are you going with newbies, and what do you think about advanced Bitcoin tools with CoinJoin and UTXO management? How important are those?
Mhm. So first of all, okay, how do I go with the newbies? It really depends on the newbie level before he enters Bitcoin. If he's more technical, if he really wants to dive deep into the text, or if it's more like a maybe a merchant that just wants to explore the way to receive Bitcoin and send. So it's very individual. Like not there's no pre-coiner that's the same, right? There's everybody's different, coming from different backgrounds. So the value or the skill of an educator is to assess the skill set of this person, because once you try to force somebody immediately into self-custody lightning wallet, well, you can try to do it, but what happens is that people are going to receive, for example with Phoenix, they're going to receive their first transaction, let's say 20,000 sats, as a merchant selling a coffee or whatever, and suddenly a channel is open where they spend, or like 3,000 sats are gone for the channel opening, which is like more than 10% of it. And they're like looking at it like, what the heck? Like, the guy told me that Lightning is very cheap. And they were like, okay, this happened. Maybe it was a mistake. Another time, somebody pays another 20,000 sats. And since you have only one channel with a capacity that cannot pass another 20K, you open another channel. The kind of Phoenix opens another channel for you. and you pay another 3,000 sats. And this way you can discourage person from using Lightning because they'll be like, what the fuck? I'm losing money on this. So without a very proper explanation of what is a channel and how it works and what are the limitations and all of that, going immediately into self-custody Lightning wallets is, I think it's doing worse than showing them first like just how the money moves. So I never, if I really encounter a person that's very new in technologies in general and they don't want to go very deep, I always go with the non-custodial or with custodial wallets like Blink, wallet of Satoshi, and then I tell people, the limitations of it, how much money they should keep, and so on. And when I see a person, coming after, asking for more and wanting to go deeper, perfect. I know that this is the right person to even deep dive. So I think this is the very, very important element of education, to really assessing the ability of that person, what's their journey, and not forcing them to kind of climb a huge wall, but rather this is the first stair, then go to another step, and so on. And then after a couple of steps, you're behind the wall and you jump through the wall and you're just like on the side of self custody and non KYC approach and all of that. So I try to really fragment it. In terms of tools like CoinJoins or other tools, definitely a big fan of them. I'm a super huge fan of more privacy on chain, more tools that will kind of get us fungibility on chain and so on. So I'm definitely a um, big fan of all of that. But again, in terms of education, I'm trying to be very careful of who's the person to educate it in. Uh, the thing is, if you educate the person well in terms of what's the value of self custody, what's the value of non KYC and fungibility and privacy, sometimes they do all the research, all the study themselves when they feel for it, when they feel that they have time, they have capacity, or they come to ask you some nuanced questions. But again, before going to these techs, you first need to educate them on the importance of what the tech is bringing, on the importance of what the feature is about. And when they get it well, when you do the very good job of explaining that, handling the objections they have around that topic, suddenly all the hard work of sitting down and scrolling through what is a coin join, how it works, and trying it out, they can do themselves. And your job is like to really show them the value of this.
Yeah, and also I'm a really big proponent of having the first interaction with Bitcoin as easy as it gets.
Yeah.
Like, don't make it more complex as it should be. Like, people are really fast overwhelmed with new technology, with
Hmm.
things they want to do, and keep it simple in the beginning, and then they can go down the rabbit hole with all the tools and all the things. Like, make them aware of the limitations, but don't overdo it with all the UTXO managements and coin join
Yeah.
and whatnot. So I'm a big fan of that. Before we go to our end routine, I have one more question I always like to ask Bitcoiners. Did you had an altcoin season for yourself? Did you, or how did you avoid the whole altcoin sphere?
I didn't avoid it. I was very deep into it. Not very, but um, and I will tell you why. And I used to joke that I was a Litecoin maximalist for a while. And the thing, like, why it was like that, because we used to have a crypto only cafeteria in 2017. It was, maybe since you're from Austria, maybe Parallel Polis in Prague. Very unique place, very historic place. It was the first crypto only cafeteria in the world, founded in 2014. So you can only pay with Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, I think Ethereum at the time as well. And there was no fiat. You couldn't pay with fiat at the time. So what we did, we with the founders of the Czech Parallel Polis, we founded the Slovak one as well, with this on the same principles. Like, we don't accept any fiat. Uh, and I remember when the price of Bitcoin was starting to go super crazily up in 2017, in like November, December, people coming to our place, they couldn't pay with Bitcoin. or they could, but nobody would, because you paid $3 in a fee for a coffee that cost you $2, and then we needed to wait, even because it was a low fee. We needed to wait a couple of hours and rely on the person not doing a double spend. So at the time, the Lightning wasn't implemented yet. So that's why I was like, guys, okay, store Bitcoin. It's a good savings technology, but for money, nope. Here is the Litecoin. You buy it for much cheaper. The fees are cheaper. It's faster and all of that. So I used to wear a Litecoin sweater, and I used to have like a lot of Litecoins at the time instead of Bitcoin. And then one day, my friend Martin came to me and said, Dusan, there is this new scaling technology for Bitcoin called Lightning Network. I'm like, okay, Martin, so show me how it works. So he showed me how it works, and it was failing. It wasn't working at all. The node was kind of falling down. I'm like, Martin, well, I don't think it works. I will stick with my Litecoin. And then after a couple of months again, he came like, Dusan, it's finally working. Like, let me show you. He showed me the BTC-based server, and all of that. I'm like, damn, like this is pretty amazing. Like super low fees, immediate settlement, and I was like, damn, this is crazy. So at that time, I understood the days of Litecoin are numbered, because basically that was the only purpose that I had Litecoin for, and that it worked for: easy, fast payments, cheap ones. So that day, I sold all my Litecoin, bought Bitcoin, and I never got back again.
I like it.
And I used to have also other coins in 2017, and I used to see like, oh, there needs to be this better Bitcoin, and it requires hours and hundreds of hours of education, of understanding why money converges to one, why it doesn't make sense to have so many monies, and so I don't think it's possible to do it like on the first try, and this is where I'm kind of not a big fan of this toxicity in Bitcoin. When somebody touched as a newbie or touches some altcoins and just slapping them on the face of like, oh, you're fucking shitcoiner, we don't talk to you. I'm like, there are like two types of shitcoiners. The one is that he's new to the ecosystem. He don't know what the money is. He just wants to probably, get rich in a sense, try to touch the things and figure out what it's all about. He has no idea what he's doing. And that person, I believe, we need to treat well and show them like why. What I do, I always show them why I have only Bitcoin. I'm not pushing them like, I'm not going to talk to you, or you need to do this. I'm showing them like, look, after these years, I stuck only with Bitcoin, and this is why. I explain all the things behind that. And if you meet a shitcoiner on the different spectrum, where he knows everything and he knows why he's shitcoining, like Richard Hart from Hex, for example, they really are doing it for them to get rich on the expense of everybody else. And these I would never like to talk to, and there's no point in speaking with them and just explaining them something, because they know why they are doing that. So I'm trying to be humble in this sense and trying to figure out what type of shitcoiner I'm engaging with, because I was on this journey myself. I wasn't Bitcoin only from the beginning, and I think it's even impossible, because all the technologies that we encounter, like the Googles, the internet, and the social media, like the first one was really rarely the best one, and there was like so much evolution and innovation happening afterwards. So for us, it seems very natural that the first one will not be the best one, and there needs to be somebody better afterwards. And it takes hours of education to really get into it. Like, oh my god! So there are things in Bitcoin that you cannot copy with a code, like the social layer, like the network effect, like just living under the radar for many years. And there are like a bunch of other stuff. So just understanding that it takes so much time, that I'm trying to be humble with newbies, not to kind of slap them on the face like, you freaking shitcoiner.
Yeah, it's important to be not too toxic, especially with people that are new to the space, and not they are not trying to scam anybody. As you said in the example, there are shitcoiners that are actually trying to just get rich of it and scam other people from their money, and there are some people that just did not do all the research, but they are in Bitcoin and they did the first step. So it's really it shows that you're really open minded and that you also that your journey is impressive. If you people approach you, hey, look at the Bitcoin, and you dismiss it, but you're open to it, and I liked your journey a lot. For the end routine, we have always a question that the previous guest asks the next guest without knowing who's the next guest is, and we kind of touched the question a little bit. And the question for you is, how long till Bitcoin is the main unit of account?
Wow. Like in the world, right? The main
Yeah.
unit of account. I would say 20 to 30 years. Hopefully
Wow.
sooner.
That's it's a nice timeline. I would love that.
I still want to be alive. My goal is to live till 2140 to see the last Bitcoin being mined. So
Uh,
I need to try hard to do that.
how old would you be by then?
Oh, like in 30 years, I'm 30 right now, so I'm gonna be 60. So I hope if I don't mess up something, I would still be around in 30
Yeah,
years.
yeah, but in 2140, then it
Oh,
will
in
be
2040, I will be 149.
uh,
So almost
yeah,
150 years.
I, I wish you all the best with that. I hope I make I hope we make it.
We're gonna have a podcast on the day of mining the last Bitcoin.
I mean that would be so sick, having a live podcast when the last Bitcoin is mined with the block
Oh
time running
man.
out, like seeing it live. But let's see. I hope medicine makes a huge huge step, so I can also do it. Like, I'm now 25, so
True, true.
let's see. Where
Got
can
it.
people find you the best? Where can people get in touch with you?
So the best way to find me is on Twitter. So Dusan Dusan underscore Matuska Matuska. That's my name and surname. They can follow our journey of MTH Academy or MTH as our company. Um, Also at Twitter at AMITYAGE. Why METH? Because we don't want to go to the story. It's almost end. But if you want, we can talk about that.
Yeah, talk about it. Like, it's okay. Like, we I have time. You said before that your laptop is running out of battery. So, like, as long your battery is running, we can talk.
Okay, it's 28% still. So since I put um, the screen kind of also I turn it off. The battery is like super holding, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so we can go into that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, people can find us on METH. And why METH? Because it's kind of weird name, doesn't resemble anything with Bitcoin, and that was on purpose. So when we were sitting together with Gabriel, my co-founder, like about 3 years ago, and chatting about Bitcoin, what Bitcoin really is about, we came to conclusions like, okay, what it means to us, freedom as well. That was the word, but we went deeper on like what the freedom actually means. Like how does the world look like when we have freedom around us? And we were speaking about the world where there is much better or much higher level of harmony, peace, friendship, and fellowship and cooperation. If we have one sound money, people can cooperate much easier and better on the global scale. Governments cannot print money to finance stupid wars. So I believe there is more harmony and peace. And there is this word in English that says amity, which is a very archaic word, not used very much today. And amity translates into fellowship, friendship, and cooperation. So we see Bitcoin as a technology that can that can bring us to the age of cooperation, to the age of amity. So that's why we put these two words together, and we made a company, METH, with a mission to educate or to bring, to welcome 100 million people in the Bitcoin rabbit hole. That's our kind of the big goal. We want to welcome as many people in the rabbit hole as there are Satoshis in one Bitcoin.
Oh,
And then also, if you open the website or if you go to a Twitter and put METH, like you see this our logo, like a little face of a girl. So that's Emiti Nakamoto, the granddaughter of Satoshi. And since Satoshi left and he's not around anymore, there needs to be somebody, pushing the education of Bitcoin forward. So we created this character, his granddaughter. This is the young blood, taking the legacy of Satoshi and spreading it around the world. So that's kind of the avatar we created to help people be on this educational journey.
Yeah, I definitely have to check this out more. Like I like the character created from the granddaughter of the Satoshi Nakamoto, and 100 million is it's a cool goal. Like I think 100 million is a really big number, but a lot of people will come into Bitcoin, so it's definitely possible. I wish
Yeah.
you all the best on the journey.
Thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you for being on.
Thanks.